All right, hey everyone, we're doing a deep dive today into iOS 18.2. You guys are obviously keen to know what's in this new update, and we've got some pretty juicy stuff to unpack. We've got a Mac Rumors article, of course, and even some lively Reddit threads to dig through. But we're not going to bore you with every tiny little change. We're going to pull out the most important, the most intriguing nuggets from these sources.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be excited about in this update, and some things that might raise a few eyebrows, too.
Okay, so let's get this big news out of the way. iOS 18.2 is launching today, December 11th, 2024. Mark it on your calendars. Get those download fingers ready. But, and you knew there was going to be a but, right? It seems Apple is playing favorites with this one.
Yeah, that's right. Not all iPhones are created equal in the eyes of 18.2.
Yeah.
The really juicy new features, what Apple's calling Apple Intelligence, are only available for iPhone 15 Pro and any of the iPhone 16 models. So if you're still rocking an older phone, you might be feeling a little left out.
It's almost like they're dangling a carrot to get us to upgrade, isn't it? What do you make of this? Is this a sign of things to come? Are we going to see more and more features that are exclusive to the latest hardware?
Well, it's a trend we've been seeing for a while now, to be honest. But this update could really be a turning point where the gap between the haves and the have-nots, so to speak, starts to widen significantly.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Think about it. What happens if future updates follow this pattern? Are people going to feel pressured to upgrade more often just to keep up?
It's a good question. It's definitely something to think about. Well, for those lucky enough to have the newest iPhones, let's dive into some of these Apple Intelligence features and see what all the fuss is about. First up, we have Genmoji, which sounds pretty fun.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It's basically Apple's answer to Bitmoji. You create your own custom emoji, and then you can use them across all your devices,
Oh.
right from the keyboard.
Oh, wow. So all sync through iCloud, too. I'm wondering, is this Apple's first step into something bigger, like a metaverse play?
You know, it's a really interesting point. Apple's been pretty quiet about the metaverse so far. But this could be their way of dipping their toes in the water.
Okay, next up we have Image Playground, which, from what I've read, sounds like it has some crazy creative potential.
Absolutely. This is where things start to get really interesting from an AI perspective. Imagine being able to create images just by describing what you want, or even by using photos from your own library as inspiration.
And I read it offers different art styles, too. Like, you could take a photo from your vacation and make it look like, I don't know, an anime or a Renaissance painting or something.
Exactly. The possibilities are pretty much endless. And that's the power of AI, right? It takes things that used to require specialized skills and software and makes them accessible to everyone.
All right, let's talk about the feature that I think everyone's really buzzing about, ChatGPT integration.
Yeah, this is a game changer. Think about it. You'll be able to access ChatGPT right from Siri or from the writing tools built in your iPhone. You don't even need a separate ChatGPT account.
It seems like Apple's really going all in on AI with this update, but I do wonder how this is going to impact Siri in the long run. I mean, if we have ChatGPT right there, what role does Siri even play?
It's a good question. Hard to say for sure what Apple's long-term plan is. Maybe Siri will become more of an interface for interacting with these more advanced AI models.
Okay, last but not least, for the Apple Intelligence features, we have visual intelligence. And this one is, as you mentioned, exclusive to the iPhone 16 models, which, yeah, feels a little unfair, but let's hear what it's all about.
This is where the real power of having AI on your device comes into play, I think. Imagine pointing your phone's camera at something.
Yeah.
And instantly getting information about it, like a superpowered Google search right in your hand.
It can use either Google Search or ChatGPT, depending on what you're looking for. It's almost like they're merging the physical and digital worlds.
Exactly. And it shows how Apple sees AI shaping our interaction with technology in the future.
So we've got Genmoji, Image Playground, ChatGPT integration, and visual intelligence. Those are the big, shiny Apple Intelligence features. But what about the rest of us who aren't rocking the newest iPhones? Is there anything in this update for us?
There is, and some of it's pretty significant. Let's start with mail categorization. This has been a long requested feature, and it finally brings Gmail-like sorting capabilities to Apple Mail.
Oh, finally. I've been waiting for this for years. Apple Mail has always felt a bit lacking in the organization department, you know? Maybe this will be enough to lure me back from Spark. I mean, having a well-organized inbox just makes life so much easier.
Absolutely. And this new feature isn't just about aesthetics. It's about using AI to help you prioritize what's important. Your messages are automatically sorted and grouped, making it much easier to find what you're looking for.
Okay, what else do we have?
Next up, let's talk about Find My. This update brings a really handy feature for those of us who are, shall we say, prone to misplacing things.
Oh, tell me more. I'm always losing things.
With iOS 18.2, you'll be able to share the location of an AirTag with trusted people. So imagine you lose your luggage on a flight. You can share the AirTag's location directly with the airline, making it much easier for them to track it down.
Wow, that's actually a really good idea. I never thought of that. Anything else that's going to make my life easier?
How about this? Natural language search is finally coming to Apple Music and Apple TV.
You're kidding. I've been wanting this forever.
It's finally here. Imagine being able to search for something using, actual human language. Like, show me sad 80s movies starring Tom Hanks instead of having to mess around with keywords and filters.
I know, it's going to make things so much easier.
It makes the whole experience much more intuitive.
What about photos? Any updates there?
There are a few. First, you can now scrub through videos frame by frame, which is perfect for finding that perfect screenshot. You can also turn off auto-looping video playback, which is a nice touch for those of us who don't need to see the same 3-second clip on repeat. And for the privacy-conscious folks out there, you can now clear your recently viewed and shared album history.
Good for those sensitive photo sessions, maybe.
Perhaps. It's all about giving users more control over their data.
Okay, so Mail, Find My, Music, TV, and Photos. What else?
Well, there's some smaller but still noteworthy additions. Voice memos on the 16 Pro models now supports layered recording, which is pretty cool for musicians or podcasters.
Oh, nice.
And then, of course, you've got the usual bug fixes and performance improvements.
Gotta have those.
It's a comprehensive update, that's for sure. But as we've seen, some of the most exciting stuff is reserved for those with the latest hardware.
Which brings us to those Reddit reactions you mentioned. I bet people have a lot to say about this update.
They do. There's a mix of excitement and, well, disappointment. A lot of people are thrilled about the new features, especially mail categorization. But there's also a lot of frustration from people who feel like they're being left behind because they don't have the newest iPhone.
It's creating a bit of a have and have-nots situation, isn't it?
It is. And it'll be interesting to see how the strategy plays out for Apple in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. So what are people actually saying on Reddit?
Well, one comment that really stood out to me was about mail categorization. Someone said, most excited about mail categorization. I think is what Gmail's been doing for a while. It's very useful and what makes Apple Mail unusable for me.
Yeah, I can see why people are excited about that. It's a feature that a lot of people have been wanting for a long time. What about the people who are disappointed?
There were a lot of comments from users who were upset that older iPhones are missing out on the AI features. One person said, disappointing that phones, even as recent as ours, aren't supported. And they were talking about the iPhone 14 Pro.
Wow, yeah, that's pretty crazy. Like, how quickly does a phone become obsolete these days?
Right. It makes you wonder how long Apple's going to continue to support older devices with meaningful software updates.
Especially if they're going to keep gating features behind the newest hardware.
It's a trend to watch, for sure.
Someone even joked that at this rate, any iPhone older than the 15 Pro might as well be considered vintage.
Yeah, it's funny. But it also kind of highlights the feeling that if you want the best iOS experience, you need to have the latest iPhone.
And it's not just about missing out on the cool new AI stuff. There's also the practical concern that older devices might not be able to handle the demands of these new features.
Right, we could start to see a real performance gap between the new iPhones and the older models.
There were also some concerns about battery life, unsurprisingly. Someone just straight up asked, let's see if it doesn't ruin the battery, which I think sums up the anxiety pretty well.
Yeah, AI can be very power hungry, so it'll be interesting to see how iOS 18.2 impacts battery life across different iPhone models.
We'll have to wait and see what the real-world data tells us, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Absolutely.
Okay, I need a little laugh after all that doom and gloom. What's something funny you saw on Reddit?
Well, someone simply wrote, at least we can delete Safari now.
Oh, I saw that one.
Right.
You're being sarcastic, right?
I think so. While the Safari updates are welcome, they're not exactly earth-shattering.
Yeah, it's more about refining the existing experience rather than reinventing the wheel.
Exactly.
What about ChatGPT integration? What are people saying about that?
Some users seem to be hoping for a more, I guess you could say, robust experience. There were questions about things like file uploads and conversation history.
So it seems like the current integration is more about quick and easy access to ChatGPT's capabilities, rather than a full replacement for the app.
Right. It's almost like Apple's trying to avoid stepping on the toes of its own apps and services.
Makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
So where does all of this leave us? Is this just the beginning of the AI invasion on iOS, or are we headed towards a future where older iPhones are basically obsolete?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're going to have to wait and see how this all plays out. But for now, let's shift our focus a bit and talk about what people are saying about the actual user experience of these new features.
Sounds good to me. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. What's one comment that really stuck with you?
Well, there was one from someone who was really frustrated with Apple Mail. They said, I just wish I could mass delete mail messages. Like, just let me search for all the messages from a sender and select all, then delete. I don't need 3-year-old messages from Papa John's.
Oh my gosh, I feel that. Apple Mail can be so frustrating sometimes.
He really can.
And it's not like they haven't had time to figure this stuff out.
Right. It's like they're overthinking things sometimes. Just give us the simple tools we need.
Agreed. There was another comment about the lack of a select all button when deleting multiple email.
Yeah, I saw that one. They did mention that you can use a 2-finger swipe to select multiple emails faster, but it's still not as intuitive as it could be.
It's those little details that can really make a difference in the user experience, and it's something that Apple used to be so good at.
Right.
I feel like with these recent updates, the focus has shifted more towards adding flashy features and less towards refining those core functionalities.
Yeah, I think that's a fair observation.
What about Siri? Have people finally forgiven Siri for all its past sins?
Oh, not quite. There were still quite a few comments about Siri being dumb.
Yeah.
One person even joked about Siri's classic response, I can't do that.
Oh, Siri. Bless its heart.
It seems like user expectations for AI assistants have outpaced Siri's capabilities.
Right. We're all expecting Siri to be like, some kind of super intelligent being that can anticipate our every need.
Exactly. And Siri just hasn't quite reached that level yet.
Maybe one day. So what else are people talking about?
There was some discussion about the potential impact of third-party browser engines on Safari. Someone asked, what happened to third-party browser engines in 18.2? I could have sworn I saw that on the roadmap some time ago.
Huh, that's a good question. I wonder if Apple's ever going to fully open up iOS to third-party browser engines.
It would be a big change. And it would definitely shake things up in the browser world.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, what about Genmoji? Are people digging the personalized emoji?
Some people are. But others have expressed concerns about the size of the Genmoji. One person just asked, are the emojis still that big?
Yeah, emoji size is a very personal preference.
It is. Some people like them big, some people like them small.
There was also some chatter about the new dynamic wallpaper. Someone mentioned that theirs was stuck on a single color, no matter what they did.
Sounds like a bug.
Yeah, probably. Hopefully it's something that Apple can fix in a future update.
Okay, let's talk about performance. How's iOS 18.2 actually running out in the wild?
Well, there's one comment that caught my eye. Someone was complaining about the music app automatically playing when they connected their iPhone to their car stereo.
Ugh, the dreaded autoplay feature.
It seems like no matter how many times Apple tries to fix it, this issue just keeps coming back.
It's the little things that can drive you crazy, you know?
Oh.
And it's not just annoying. It can be dangerous if you're fumbling with your phone while driving, which, we should all try to avoid.
Agreed.
What about notifications? There have been some reports of delayed notifications, particularly with the Mail app.
Oh, no. That's not good.
One person said they would only see new emails downloading when they actually opened the Mail app, even though they had notifications enabled.
That kind of defeats the purpose of notifications, doesn't it?
It does. Timely notifications are important, especially for something like email.
And, of course, we have to talk about the big one. Battery drain.
One person simply asked, will it fix the battery drain issue? Which I think is the question on everyone's mind.
Yeah, it's the eternal question with every iOS update.
Battery life is always a top concern for smartphone users. And with all these new AI features running in the background, there's a valid concern that iOS 18.2 could make battery drain worse.
I guess we'll have to wait and see. What else did you see on Reddit that you thought was interesting?
There was a comment from someone who was having trouble with stickers. They said that their stickers hadn't been working properly since they got their iPhone 16. Adding new stickers would cause them to disappear, and their existing stickers weren't showing up.
Oh, that's weird.
It sounds like a pretty annoying bug.
It's funny how these seemingly minor issues can really impact the user experience.
It's true.
Okay, let's talk about Apple Intelligence a bit more. What are people saying about whether these features are actually useful? Or if they're just hype?
There's definitely some skepticism out there. One person just flat out said, features that don't much of anything.
Ouch. Harsh but fair.
It's true that some of these features feel more like gimmicks than game changers at this point.
Yeah, but you have to remember that AI is still a relatively new technology, and it's going to take some time for Apple to figure out how to integrate it into our lives in a truly meaningful way.
Right, I think we're just scratching the surface of what's possible.
There was also some discussion about Apple's decision to make ChatGPT integration exclusive to newer iPhones.
Yeah, one person said, not letting Siri use ChatGPT unless you have an iPhone 15 or higher is so dumb. It's not going to make me buy a new iPhone. It's just going to make me continue not using Siri for anything other than setting timers.
Yeah, I get that. It does feel a bit like a slap in the face to people who don't have the latest hardware.
Right, it's like Apple saying, if you want the full iOS experience, you need to upgrade.
I wonder if that's going to backfire on them in the long run.
It's possible.
What about people who are still using, like, an iPhone 14 or older?
Yeah, there were definitely some comments from people who were feeling left out. One person asked, so do iPhone 14 Pro users get anything new this update?
It does seem like the bulk of the new features are for those with the newest iPhones, which, is kind of a bummer for everyone else.
It is, and I think it's a trend that we're going to see continue.
Yeah, as AI becomes more central to the iPhone experience, I think we're going to see more and more features that are exclusives to the latest hardware.
Which raises some interesting questions about the future of iOS.
And about the affordability of staying up to date with Apple products.
Exactly.
Okay, let's dive a little deeper into some of the specific Apple Intelligence features, starting with Image Playground. What are people saying about that?
Well, not everyone is impressed. One person simply said, Image Playground is so ass.
Well, that's direct.
It is. Maybe expectations were too high. Or maybe the app just needs more time to mature.
Yeah, it's hard to say at this point. What about the camera updates?
The camera is always a big focus with new iOS updates, and this one is no exception.
There's been a lot of talk about visual intelligence.
Right. And there were some concerns expressed about the potential for privacy violations. One person asked, so without iPhone 16 and up, can't point the camera at a math problem and have AI solve it?
It's an interesting question. I wonder if Apple's going to address those concerns.
They'll have to. As AI becomes more powerful, privacy and security are going to become increasingly important considerations.
What about the new night mode?
There have been some mixed reviews. Some people are saying it's amazing, while others are complaining that their photos are looking grainy and overprocessed.
It sounds like it might still need a bit of fine-tuning.
Probably.
Okay, what about voice memos?
There was a report of a really weird bug where the first letter of sentences in lists would get deleted when recording voice memos.
Oh, what? That's so strange.
I know. It makes you wonder how that even happens.
What about the Stocks app?
There was a lot of excitement about the addition of pre-market stock quotes. One person said, most excited about pre-market quotes in the Stocks app.
I can see why that would be a big deal for people who are into stocks. What about the Photos app?
Well, it seems like it's still a bit of a mess. One person just asked, does it fix the awful Photos app? Which I think pretty much sums up how a lot of people feel.
Yeah, the Photos app has been a source of frustration for a lot of people for a long time.
It has. And it doesn't seem like this update is going to change that.
Bummer. What else did you see on Reddit that you thought was noteworthy?
There was some discussion about the new Share Item Location feature in Find My, which allows you to share the location of an AirTag with someone else.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. It's a cool feature, but it also has some, creepy implications.
Right, it could definitely be misused, especially for things like stalking or harassment.
It's important for Apple to put some safeguards in place to prevent that kind of thing from happening. What about the ability to set new default phone and messaging apps?
There was a lot of excitement about that. One person said, Apple will let everyone set new default phone and messaging apps with iOS 18.2.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. It's something that Android users have been able to do for years.
It is. And it's a big win for user choice.
For sure. What about RCS messaging? Is Apple finally getting on board with that?
Well, there was a comment about RCS support being rolled out to beta users.
So maybe it's finally happening.
It's been a long time coming.
Okay, what about voice control?
There was some buzz about the new voice control features in iOS 18.2, especially for musicians and podcasters.
Oh, cool. What kind of features are we talking about?
Well, for example, Voice Memos now supports layered recording. So you can add vocals over an existing song idea without needing headphones. And then you can import your projects directly into Logic Pro.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. It's really cool to see Apple adding features like that, features that are specifically designed for creators.
It is.
What about emoji? Any updates on that front?
Well, it seems like emoji size is still a hot topic of debate. One person was complaining about the new emoji being too big, while another person was lamenting the lack of a middle finger emoji.
Classic. You can't please everyone.
No.
What about the dynamic island? Any news on that front?
There was a comment from someone who was having trouble with the dynamic island. Their dynamic wallpaper wasn't changing throughout the day. It was just stuck on one color.
That sounds like a bug.
Probably.
Hopefully it's something that Apple can address in a future update. What else?
Well, there was one comment that really made me think. Someone said, I really want some of this natural language stuff to come to Calendar. I like Fantastical, sure, but I'd love to be able to put in calendar entries like that can.
Oh, yeah, that would be cool. Like being able to just say, hey, Siri, schedule a meeting with so-and-so for tomorrow at 2 p.m.
Exactly. It would make using the calendar app so much easier.
I hope Apple's listening.
Me too.
Okay, let's wrap up this section by talking about what all of this means for the future of iOS. This update feels like a real turning point for Apple. They're really going all in on AI, and it's raising some really big questions about where they're headed next.
It is. It's clear that AI is going to play a huge role in the future of iOS. But how is Apple going to balance innovation with user experience? How are they going to address the concerns about privacy and security? These are all questions that we're going to be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
It's a valid point, and, we've already talked about it a bit. This whole thing of gating features behind hardware, it's a gamble for Apple. On the one hand, yeah, it might push people to upgrade more often, but alienating a big chunk of your user base, that's not really a winning strategy in the long run.
Right. It's like telling someone with an iPhone 14, hey, your phone's already outdated.
Exactly. Even though it was top of the line just a year ago.
Yeah, it creates this weird perception of obsolescence. And for people who can't afford to upgrade every year, that feeling of being left behind is not going to make them happy. It's a tough balance for Apple to strike. They want to push innovation, but they also need to keep things inclusive.
Absolutely. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. I want to get into some of the more technical stuff in this update. One thing that caught my eye in the McRumors article was the bit about Apple using machine learning to improve battery life.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
It sounds like iOS 18.2 is going to learn how you use your phone and then optimize the battery performance accordingly.
It's an interesting approach. Instead of just using these generic power-saving tricks, they're trying to personalize it.
So like if you're a gamer, for example, iOS 18.2 is going to know that, and it'll adjust how it manages background processes to give you the best possible battery life.
Exactly. It's a much smarter way to handle power management.
Hopefully it actually works as well as they're promising.
The real test will be out in the real world.
For sure. Okay, I want to talk about photography for a minute.
Always a hot topic.
What are your thoughts on the camera updates in iOS 18.2, especially the improved night mode?
I saw some sample shots on MacRumors. They look pretty impressive.
It's amazing how good smartphone cameras have gotten.
It's crazy.
It's like having a professional-grade camera in your pocket.
Right.
But there were also some comments on Reddit about potential issues with the new night mode. Someone said their night mode photos were looking grainy and overprocessed.
Interesting. It's possible they're still ironing out some kinks with the new algorithm.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they release a minor update to fix those issues.
It happens all the time.
Speaking of updates, what do you think of the new Photos app redesign?
Honestly, I have mixed feelings.
Same here.
There are some good things about it, like the new editing tools. And the way it organizes your photos is better.
Yeah, I like that part.
But then there are other things that just feel clunky.
The memories feature is a bit much for me.
Yeah, I saw that comment about the cat funeral slideshow.
Oh my God. That's just wrong.
It's like the AI needs a bit more, I don't know, emotional intelligence.
Right.
It needs to know when to just back off.
Totally. Okay, moving on. What are you most excited about in this update?
Honestly, I think the integration of Shazam into the music app is pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
It just makes sense.
It's so much more convenient.
Exactly. You don't have to switch between apps anymore.
Just tap a button and boom, you know what song is playing.
It's a nice little quality of life improvement.
For sure. What about privacy? Any updates there?
There is one that's worth talking about. The new app privacy report.
Tell me more.
It gives you a really detailed breakdown of how apps are using your data. like
Mm.
what permissions they've requested, what data they've accessed, who they've shared that data with.
It's like having a private investigator for your data.
Exactly.
I wonder how app developers are going to react to this.
It's going to be interesting to see. Maybe they'll be more careful about how they use our data now that we can see what they're doing.
I hope so. Okay, what about focus modes? Any improvements there?
There are, and they're pretty cool.
Fill me in.
You can now customize your lock screen and home screen based on your active focus mode.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So if you're in work mode, for example, you can hide all your personal apps and silence all your non-work notifications.
That's a great
It
idea.
helps you stay focused and avoid distractions.
It takes focus modes to a whole new level.
It does.
What about live text? That was a pretty big feature last year.
Yeah, and it's getting even more powerful with iOS 18.2.
What can it do now?
You can now use live text to translate text in real time.
Really? Wow.
Just point your camera at some text, and it'll translate it for you.
That's amazing. It's like having a universal translator in your pocket.
But there are also some privacy concerns.
Right, because your phone is constantly scanning for text now.
Exactly.
And potentially faces, too.
It's something to be aware of.
Definitely. We need to be careful about how much access we give these AI features. Okay, what about Memoji? Any fun updates there?
There are new hairstyles, accessories, clothing options, and you can now create emoji stickers.
Oh, that's cool.
So you can have your Memoji doing all sorts of fun things.
I like it. What about the smaller updates? Anything else that you think is worth mentioning?
There's improved support for AirPods Pro, better noise cancellation, better spatial audio,
Nice.
and there are some new health tracking features in the Health app.
Like what?
Sleep quality tracking, respiratory rate tracking.
That's cool. It seems like Apple's really committed to making the Health app a more comprehensive health and wellness tool.
They are. And there's some updates to the mindfulness app, too.
Oh, yeah.
New guided meditations, breathing exercises.
I like that. It's good to see Apple taking mental health seriously.
It is.
Okay, I think we've covered most of the major updates in iOS 18.2. Where do we go from here?
Well, I think it's time to start thinking about the bigger picture. What does this update mean for the future of iOS?
It feels like a real turning point for Apple.
It does.
They're betting big on AI,
They are.
and it's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out.
Exactly.
How's Apple going to balance innovation with user experience?
That's the big question.
How are they going to address the concerns about privacy and security?
And how will all of this affect the affordability of the iPhone?
These are all questions that we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive. It's a lot to take in, isn't it?
It is.
It's exciting, but it's also kind of scary.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's like we're standing on the edge of something really big,
Yeah.
and we don't know what's on the other side.
It's like that feeling you get when you're about to jump off a diving board. You know it's going to be exhilarating, but there's also that little bit of fear.
Exactly.
And I think that's appropriate because we're talking about a fundamental shift in how we interact with technology.
Right. It's not just about the cool new features.
Mm.
It's about the bigger implications for our lives,
Mm.
our privacy, our security, even our sense of autonomy.
One of the things that I keep thinking about is the digital divide.
Yeah, me too.
We've talked about how some of these new AI features are only available on the newest iPhones. What happens to the people who can't afford to upgrade every year?
Right. Or the people who don't even want to upgrade every year.
Exactly.
Are they just going to be left behind?
It's a valid concern. And it's not just about affordability. It's also about accessibility. Not everyone is comfortable with technology. Not everyone wants to learn how to use all these new features.
If we're not careful, we could end up creating a world where only the tech-savvy elite have access to the best tools and opportunities.
That's a scary thought.
What about our creative industries? I mean, tools like Image Playground and Genmoji are amazing. But what happens when everyone can create professional quality content?
It's a double-edged sword.
Mm.
On the one hand, it democratizes creativity. It gives everyone the power to express themselves.
But on the other hand, it could devalue the work of professional artists and designers.
Exactly.
Like, we're entering uncharted territory here, and we don't really know what the long-term consequences will be.
I think we're going to need to have some serious conversations about ethics and responsibility as AI becomes more prevalent in our lives.
Agreed. We can't just blindly embrace these new technologies without thinking about the potential downsides.
We need to be asking tough questions about privacy, about bias, about the potential for misuse.
I'm also concerned about our attention spans. We're already bombarded with distractions from all sides.
Right.
Will having even more AI-powered features and notifications on our phones make it even harder to focus?
It's a legitimate concern. Our phones are already like extensions of our brains. And as they become more powerful, they have the potential to control us even more.
It's up to us to use these technologies in a way that benefits us, not the other way around.
Absolutely.
What about the future of work? Do you think AI is going to automate away all our jobs?
It's a possibility. But I think it's more likely that AI will change the nature of work. It'll create new jobs, and it'll make existing jobs more efficient.
So we're going to need to adapt.
We are. We're going to need to learn new skills, and we're going to need to be flexible.
It's a time of great uncertainty, but it's also a time of great opportunity.
It is.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into iOS 18.2, I want to leave you with this thought. What does all of this mean for you? How do you see AI shaping your life in the years to come?
Are you excited? Are you apprehensive? Share your thoughts with us. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. It's been a wild ride.
It has.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.